All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust meeting of December 17th, 2024. We'll now call the meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda are the approval of the minutes from the November 19th, 2024 trust meeting. If there's no questions or comments, we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. The item passes. Item 3 on the agenda is ratification of claims for November of 2024. No questions or comments. We can take a motion and a second on that. We have a motion and a second. Item passes. Brings us to item 4 on the agenda, items for individual consideration. Item 4A is a joint resolution approving a $2.2 million allocation from TIF 2 and a $1.6 million allocation from the Klassen TIF for Palomar parking garage. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll give you just a couple quick words, and then Kathy O'Connor is going to give a quick presentation on this. So this is a unique public-private partnership. I think most of you are familiar with Palomar and what they do. They're, provide wraparound services and a place for different partners and agencies to provide services to folks who have experienced domestic and other types of violence. This is a MAPS 4 project to build a new facility for them, and our folks with our developers with Midtown Renaissance had been providing that building where they are now. They're also donating some land to build the new building. MAPS 4 is providing funding for that. As part of that, there's a need to build a parking garage next to it. So the Palomar building will be a building owned by the city. The garage will be a private garage, but what we're looking at is, kind of in consideration for them providing the land for the building, and they're not charging land for the garage or a developer fee, but MAPS really desired to purchase some spaces to provide to Palomar. So what this project is and what you're being asked to consider is an allocation from TIF 2 of $2.2 million and from the new Klassen TIF of $1.6 million. TIF 2's money would be, the downtown TIF would be upfront money that would be paired with $3.5 million from MAPS 4 money, and that would be upfront money that would help purchase really the rights to use 130 out of the 309 spaces for 30 years plus some options. And then the Klassen money would be provided as some pay-as-you-go TIF over time, which would be structured as for 10 years providing 95% back, for another 5 years 80% back, and then for the last 10 years 50% back. And you'll see that that's really to help provide just a very small, meager return on the ongoing operations of that parking garage. Again, this is really unique, and tried to put that out there and maybe a little confusing, but Kathy's going to do a presentation and kind of walk us through the project, and we can kind of come back and look at the different pieces. But the developer would also be putting $4 million of financing and equity into this project, as well as donating the land and foregoing any developer fee on it. So it really is a unique public-private partnership between the two different TIFs, MAPS 4, and the developer to kind of make Palomar and the private garage all happen.
Thank you, Kenny. Kathy O'Connor with the Coalign Group, and I'm here on behalf of Midtown Renaissance. You can go into the next slide. So as Kenny mentioned, this is a unique partnership between the city, a philanthropic organization, and a private developer to try to bring this idea to fruition. So I think you all are familiar with Palomar. The star shows their current location at 11th and Hudson. Go to the next one. This is their lovely building. This building was purchased by Midtown Renaissance in 2017. They were going to tear it down, but the founders of Palomar said, wait, hold on just a minute, we have a better idea. Let us use the building as the home for Palomar. And they've been renting it from Midtown Renaissance since then, basically at a rental rate that just covers the maintenance costs on the building. Go on. The next part of this saga is MAPS 4, and there is a MAPS 4 project, as you know, to build a new facility for Palomar, which will be located across the street at the Purple Star. Go on. So this is the site that, as it looks right now, the property closest to Hudson is where the building, the Palomar facility, will be located, and they'll be going from about 28,000 feet in their current facility to about 80,000 feet in the new facility. Go to the next. This is just the site plan, so it shows the new building and then the parking garage immediately to the west. The parking garage will be attached to the building, and we can talk about it more later, but there'll be certain very specific security measures taken to make sure that the clients of Palomar are protected and have secure access into the facility. This is a rendering of the Palomar building that's been developed by the MAPS 4 architecture team, again, looking at from the same perspective as the photograph was that you saw a minute ago. And this is a view of the parking garage from 11th Street. And the wall between the building and the parking garage is shown here as well. This is a look at the budget for the project. The total project is about $11.8 million. As Kenny mentioned, Midtown Renaissance is contributing the value of the land to the project, and they are forgoing their developer fee. So the funding includes the $4.1 million in the private investment, $3.5 million from MAPS 4, and the $2.2 million from the downtown TIF. So again, the structure of this is that Midtown Renaissance will donate the land to the city for the MAPS 4 Palomar facility. Midtown Renaissance will build the new parking garage and own it, and 130 spaces of the 309 will be provided to Palomar for their use. There'll be coordinated design, construction, and an estimated completion date of around 2026. The garage won't take as long to build as the Palomar building, but there'll be times that they finish up at about the same time. Midtown Renaissance, again, will donate the land for the garage plus their developer fee and provide the $4 million in private investment. The MAPS 4 contribution and the MAPS 2 contribution are through a 30-year forgivable loan that provides for the purchase of the parking for Palomar and also basically guarantees the use of those funds in the way that the city intends. The Class N Corridor TIF also, it will be providing an allocation to this project of $1.6 million, and that's structured as 95% of the ad valorem tax increment that's generated for years 1 through 10, 80% in years 11 through 15, and then 50% for years 16 through 25. Go to the next one. And really that piece of, that bit of the incentive package from the Class N Corridor TIF helps to make this cash-on-cash return a little bit more attractive. It's still not terrific, but improves it from a 3.2% cash-on-cash return to about 6.7%. And that is pretty much it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Comments?
I have one question. You mentioned the safety of the parking garage, and I'm familiar with some of those, how they operate. Are those spaces going to cost the clients, or are they going to be the 130 that are for Palomar? Are they going to be free for the clients, for them to park there?
So the 130 spaces are free to Palomar.
Okay.
That's what the funding is being used for. The $3.5 million in MAPS, plus the
Perfect.
really the $2 million from the downtown TIF help make the cost of those spaces free to Palomar.
Thank you. I was just curious about that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
If you look at the MAPS money and the TIF money together, plus the extra security things that have to be put in place, that equates to about that percentage of the projects. That's how, kind of in talking with the city manager and the MAPS office and the developer, we came up with that number. It's about the proportionate amount so that Palomar can have the spaces for free.
Okay.
They're
great.
getting
Thank you.
like 42% of the spaces but 49% of the cost for the project is associated with Palomar because of those extra security features
Right.
and some of the design considerations that were put into the design of the parking garage for safety and security.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, just the only thing I would add is I'm very excited about this project, knowing what all Palomar does for our community. Just great things for sure.
It's a great,
So,
great organization, and we're glad to be a part of it.
thank you for being there. All right, so we can take a motion. We have a motion and a second. And item 4A passes. Item 4B is a joint resolution approving an allocation of $3 million in GOLT funds to be used as the funding source for Classen Corridor Increment District B to provide a low-interest loan in support of the redevelopment of the Gold Dome. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I can work the button. So appreciate this opportunity, and I'm just going to give you a quick update on what this allocation is, and then Mike Brown's going to come give a presentation on this project. This is part of, if you'll recall, when we created the Classen Corridor TIF, we created a specific little TIF district around the Gold Dome. So it could, develop in its own timeline and not have to affect the rest of this. What we're putting together here is this is about a $10 million project to repurpose the Gold Dome as a entertainment and music venue. What's being proposed here would be to provide a $3 million loan. This would have to be something, as you recall, since the Classen Corridor TIF is a new TIF and doesn't have money, we would have to borrow this money from the GOLT fund, which is an allowable use. We've done this before on a few projects, for example, like the Homeland project. This would be structured with a lot of different protections to cover the city. We'd have to make sure that they had evidence of financing of the other pieces, performance bonds, personal guarantees. Our funds would be escrowed with the bank. These are the normal things we would do when we provide upfront money. But this is a little bit unique in that this project's more about saving a building as opposed to looking at, just purely returns. And because of that, it's also a unique project that I think has some difficulty getting financing. And so this is really us providing, about 30% of the financing on this project. However, the structure would be put in place that if not only would the TIF have a minimum tax payment put in place that would ensure this investment would be repaid over the life of the TIF, on top of that, we're also putting in a profit sharing mechanism that basically, if this does do well, and you're going to see a presentation that they think, looking at this, that it could potentially do well, anything over and above a 20% return, we would have a 60-40 split in profits. So you'll see here when Mike goes through his presentation, you can go ahead and start coming up, Mike. Looking at some pretty conservative projections, we're hopeful that this thing can be successful. And on top of the TIF, we also would share back in some of the profits to get the loan repaid quicker. So that's the gist of what we're putting together. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike to kind of take you through the project, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Kenny. You can see these are some conceptual drawings that were done back in 21. The outdoor piece that you see there is a theoretical phase 2 that could be added in that mimics what the teller drive-through windows were when it was operated as a bank. And as Kenny said, the key piece for this is it's a difficult type project in the space that we're in. I lived through COVID with 2 or 3 of these types of buildings, and anything like that again hope we never do that. This one, with the piece from the TIF, on the repayment side of it, I think, Kenny, we've got this fixed at $120,000 annually on the ad valorem. So on just a standard payback, you can do the math on the return there. And then as we go through forward, there's a financial calculation here that shows that if our returns exceed 20%, that there's a 40% of that that'll go into to repay that TIF. And this is just a piece that was done in 2019 on live entertainment, economic impact into a market. So for every $100 concert ticket that's spent, it equates to about $350 spent in that market, whether it's hotels, restaurants, retail, any other type of an impact from that. And we've seen where this goes through. We've got a project in Wichita where high retail corridor, not a lot of area to park, and people have to park and walk to the space. And they walk past these retail shops that close at 6 o'clock. They're there at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and they're back there the next morning shopping. So it's been a real impact to the folks that are neighbors of these types of a property. You can go ahead and go forward. A little bit of history bullet points. We all know it was 58. We tried for historic tax credits. National Park Service ultimately denied us because of the wall that's in the mezzanine there that they deemed was historically significant to the building. It was added just to block off the upstairs for storage at some point, and then it was converted to office space probably in the 70s or 80s. But that negated our ability to participate in the historic tax credit program. We then were introduced to the Route 66 grant program, and we've made 2 attempts at that, both with no success of any monetary reward there. Not sure how that building wasn't significant to Route 66 in Oklahoma, but we moved on, and Kenny and his team presented us with this because we've been working with them closely for what feels like a year or so now. And this was an opportunity that we think we can get to do this. And, this is the last thing that we think that can be done to save the building. And it's an odd building. It's been office, it's been restaurant, it's been massage parlor, it's been everything, and it's just all failed. You can go ahead and go forward to this will give you a breakdown. The equity piece from us would be around $700,000, debt 6.5, the TIF funding 3, all in at a little under 10.5. The acquisition is $3 million, some closing costs, soft costs, construction costs, all in put us at 10.3, and then the TIF comes in as a low interest, almost bridge mezz piece to facilitate that. And then you can go forward. Upon final code review, we think the building will land somewhere between 2,500 and 28 to 3,000 in capacity. Estimate that 60% of 65 shows a year will put us right around a little under 100,000 people, with a net revenue to the bottom line of $24 a head. And that would give us these revenue numbers with our debt service that throws off a net of $1 million. And then you can go back. I think there's another slide here. Is that right, Kenny, that shows the breakdown? Right. That would show that an additional $346,000 from the year one of that with the 65 events puts back an additional $346 on top of the 120 ad valorem that would be used to pay back the TIF. Now, these numbers are also based off just as if Dwight Yoakam, Willie Nelson, or any other band came through and played there 65 times a year and the building was dark the other 300 days. Not a reality, but this is as conservative as a number as if we only went through with national tours. We didn't have a birthday party or a chamber event or Kalidi Ford or whoever that, a car dealership have an event. It was just strictly 65 events, and these are where we feel we are comfortable to get a return to.
I think the point we wanted to make on this was if we really are successful, we could get this loan paid back fairly quickly. But again, we've set the $120,000 minimum payment so that covers over the life of the TIF. We'd recover the entire amount of the investment. But the hope is that this is successful, and any profits that kind of go over our threshold, we would share in that and pay the loan back quicker.
Questions, comments?
Any comments, questions?
I have a question. So do you all have some sort of either appraisal or market study that can support the numbers that you have here that you presented to us?
A market study? Mm-hmm. We've just used our own internal data that we have from
Okay.
operating in multiple cities. And I grew up in Oklahoma, and I've been coming to Oklahoma City, and I'm active in the concert market, and I know what's going through the market. So we feel that it's a return for the market fits.
Okay. Are there any kind of the cost benefit of being, and I'm thinking of Uptown where you have a theater and a kind of entertainment venue, any cost benefit to being in close proximity to the other venue?
I'm sorry, cost benefit in what? Well, I don't understand your question.
Talking about tower.
Yeah.
Is there any benefit?
Is
to
there any
being
drawback
close?
to this property being near the Tower Theater that also does concerts and
I wouldn't
hosts
think that it's any
events?
different than a Chili's being next door to an Applebee's.
I think that there's a difference, but okay. Okay, so you
No,
would say no.
I mean, the tower is a 1,200 capacity, mostly seated theater. This will operate 2,500 to 3,000, primarily standing GA space.
Okay. Okay. And this is your first time doing just so far as your background and experience, your first time doing an entertainment venue here in Oklahoma City, in this market?
In Oklahoma City, yes.
In Oklahoma City, okay. Could you share your experience in other cities?
Yeah, I've been part of
comparable?
developments in Fort Smith, Arkansas, of a 53,000 square foot building, 276,000 square feet, both historic, in Cleveland, Ohio, Wichita, Kansas, 2 buildings. I'm actively developing one there now that's open and operating, the Crown Uptown Theater. We've run a development in Cleveland, Ohio on a 1,000 capacity, another historic building. Everything's historic. We have another property in Pineville, Missouri that's on a 260-acre farm with a moonshine distillery. Has an outdoor stage there that will hold up to 5,000.
Okay. And in those projects, you were the developer, you GC'd with a local firm and operated
I
the
self-performed the construction, the development, the entitlement, the programming, and some of the buildings, even the piece of tile, carpet, and paint that went in them.
business? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm familiar with the banking historical part of the building, but I was just curious, with it being a concert venue, is there plans for parking or any other areas to park?
As we get into that, we feel that there's surface parking lots there. The deck that's to the south of us at the apartment building is underutilized. So we would reach out to develop parking relationships. And in markets like this, people will determine if people don't want to walk from somewhere in a market like this. I mean, if you look at any venue that's either in a downtown market, that you're going to have to find a surface lot. But with the advent of Uber and Lyft and a lot of the public transit opportunities are in this part of the city, and in other markets where we have lots, we've seen parking revenue go down 25-30% just from the rideshare people. So I think that parking will be mitigated and not pose a threat or a risk to the market.
Okay, and then is that also, is it strictly concerts, or is it also going to be available for possibly weddings and such?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the building, it's a multi-purpose use space that, we could put, we had roller derby conversations. We've had setting in the round with an orchestra with all candles and doing
Okay.
a presentation. If OCU had something, or one of the colleges had anything that's entertainment or that someone want to sell a ticket to, we can make the space available for.
So even, I guess that would also include the schools that are in the area, possibly for them to hold concerts there,
Well,
orchestra?
it's not going to be a community center by any means. It's a for-profit entity, so they would be subject to any rental rates that we would provide to
Right.
anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Kenny, what has been the challenge with securing financing? Is it the loan to value or?
The highest and best use of that piece of dirt is a flat piece of dirt with a hotel and multi-use retail on it. Music venues traditionally, or restaurants or anything in the entertainment sector, are not a favorable asset class to lenders, and you're subject to higher rates, more stringent equity requirements. So it's a challenging field to jump into and try to finance.
I would also say, and Troy Humphreys is here, that the current owner of the property, we've had those discussions. This is really the only viable project that's come forward on this, and that's the issue, I think, is trying to save the building. It's, to Mike's point, I think it's a nice hard corner at, 2 major streets, so a lot of folks would want to scrape the building and build something else there, and that's been the struggle, I think.
I mean, our own internal information is to not build this venue because it's a higher and better use for that piece of property. But we have a passion for the building. We think we can make it work with this use. But it's going to take a village.
All right.
And one other thing to think about over there is that, look at what the BOK Center did to Tulsa, and this is nowhere near the scope of a BOK Center or an arena that's happening. But a lot of the retail and the real estate that's over there is not your highest rent in the area, I would think. And I think if you start putting 100,000 people a year on this corner, everybody in that community is going to benefit from increased traffic and valuations on their property. I think it's just something that you can see historically where that happens.
You just reminded me, is that dome, is it a wraparound where if there's a performer in the middle, it's like a circle
That's
around?
all, that's not determined yet. We could
Okay.
do that, yes.
Okay.
That is absolutely an option, the flexibility of the space, depending on where we line with final programming of the,
Got it.
there's multiple ways we could set up stages and do things in the round. We could have a fixed stage off in one direction. What throws you off in there is you walk into it and it's round, and then when you get in there, it's oval. And you spatially, and then you've got the elevation changes of the measure. So it's looking at it, it's hard to picture where you would see a stage.
Okay, from one of the pictures, I kind of got that idea, and I was recently at the Oklahoma Contemporary, and they just developed one that was full circle.
Yeah, in
so
the round. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's flexible
okay.
to do so.
I was curious. Thank you.
Absolutely. And for sporting events, you could put a boxing ring in there. You could do all kinds of things.
All right. With that, we can go ahead and take a motion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and cast your votes. All right, the item passes. Brings us to item 4C, a joint resolution of GOLT funds not to exceed $750,000 to amend the agreement with the Alliance for Economic Development to manage and operate the city's American Rescue Plan Act grant funds. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just as a reminder, almost 3 years ago, I guess it's been about 2 years and 10 months ago, we did a agreement to manage $20 million of ARPA funds to do all the small business and workforce development programs for the city. As we've managed this program, we've worked through this, just kind of wanted to give you a few reminders that we've had about 26 different programs within this. We've served over 800 businesses. We've served over 600 individuals in workforce training. And as we went through this the last few months, just to give you a little bit of history, and I've kind of given you a couple of allusions to this in the past. About 6 to 9 months ago, we started looking at the programs and saying, well, we're concerned that we might end up underspending the program. So we started, we meet weekly with the city and the city manager's office and have been going through this process. So, we all collectively made the decision to go ahead and open up some new programs. And, there was a couple different business accelerator programs, but one of the major ones was the third round of our storefront improvement. Just as a reminder, we did like up to $25,000 for small businesses and minority businesses where they could, redo their signage, improve their storefronts, et cetera. So historically speaking, this is always a tough one to manage because we got a lot of folks in the program and folks don't do what they're supposed to do. They fall out of the program. They don't, meet the eligibility requirements. And previously we had folks operating at about 60%, completion rate. This last round, we put people in, all of a sudden we got a 90% completion rate and also a little bit higher average spend, kind of moving from about 16,000 to 20. So really that came to, we started meeting with the city a few months ago and talking about, what should we do on this? There's a lot of demand on this program and it's been really successful. And just some of the things I'll tell you is we've seen where we've actually had 260 plus jobs created out of this, which just wasn't even a job creation program, but just helping businesses expand. We've seen about a 15% increase in foot traffic with these businesses that have been in the program. And we've seen about a 12% average growth in business with folks who are in the program. So it's been very successful. So what we started looking at was, well, we had more demand than we had funds. And we don't have any obligation. We could stop where we're at, and we've made some cutbacks on some of our grants. So for example, like our business accelerators, for example, there's some where we were going to do an $8,000 grant, we just did a $4,000 grant. But we started looking at this and said, if we were able to provide about $750,000 of additional funds, we could go ahead and fund all of these eligible applications that we've got. So that's what we've got before you today, would be to ask to allocate really from either GOLT or other funds. And I think the intent is we, as Joanna and the city and myself started looking at this, we actually have some interest earnings on our GOLT funds and some interest earnings on some of our general economic development funds that could potentially be allocated to this. Really wouldn't impact very much or impair any of our other programs. And we just felt like this was something that would be good to continue helping some of our smaller businesses. Just a reminder, 82% of these businesses we've helped have been minority owned. So, been a very successful program. I think this is, I think I've mentioned to you a couple times about the hardest part was landing this plane here at the end of just having to kind of get a lot of people qualified. And, I think looking back, I still don't think that we would have done anything different because we didn't want to get in a situation where we were giving a couple $1 million back to the feds. We'd rather make sure we try to make these impacts to some of our small businesses. So really what's before you would be to provide an allocation of these funds. We would work closely with the city, have to provide a full accounting, and then I believe this would cover everything that we've got, and we also have had some different philanthropic partners reach out, and I don't want to mention anybody yet, but we've had more than one reach out asking to help on this. There's a potential we would not even need all of these funds, and it provides that if we go through the program and finish it out, any unused funds would be returned to the city. We have gotten to a place where we have, there are no new applications, no new programs. Everything's been ended because ARPA was supposed to end on December 31st. So we're in the process and getting very close to kind of having final numbers, but there's invoices and things coming in. There's folks that have been approved, and we're calling them every day going, hey, you got to get your stuff turned in, but we're waiting on folks. So there's still some folks that may fall out of the program, but we're trying to make sure we have enough funding to get everybody approved who is eligible. So,
Great.
Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Siddle?
I just have one on the numbers. What do you think was a factor in increasing from the 60% to 90%?
One, I think we got just better at communicating, and quite frankly, I think two it was a trust thing of, when we first started, we had a lot of folks we'd go out and meet with and talk with, and there'd be a lot of reluctance. They weren't sure if this was real. And then we start seeing a lot of these happen. You can kind of go all over the city, and we're going to do a report later on to kind of give you pictures, more information. It's really happened all over the city, different places. And so I think as people saw things happening, and then the deadline, people started going, oh, there's a deadline, we better hurry, and there was kind of a rush to get in. But I think just that trust building and people seeing things happen, and there's even been ones where things have happened, one example is a Cafe Cacao. They were in our program, and they got the facade improvement, and they redid their outside, if you've seen that up on Class. And one of their neighbors saw that, and they went and painted their restaurant without any help from us. So we've had some spillover effect too, but it just kind of, I think people getting used to, hey, this is a real thing. Some people were skeptical about, really, you're going to give me money to redo my storefront? But it's been very successful, and it's helped a lot of folks. So.
All right, if no further questions, we can take a motion. With the motion and a second, please vote. Item 4C passes. Real quickly, we're going to skip down to item 4F, and I will need to recuse myself for this item. Councilman Stonecipher, if you don't mind addressing that.
This is a resolution for reimbursement of travel expenses incurred by the chairman of the trust, which were necessarily incurred in fulfillment of his duties as chairman. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion as to the resolution found at 4F. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. It passes. Oh, I think it does. It passes. Thank you.
It passed.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. All right, back to item 4D. Economic Development Agreement with the First Americans Museum Foundation of $2 million to assist in creating the Family Discovery Center. Mr. Siddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just a reminder, this item you heard about previously, and it went through the process, and this body, I think, allocated the money back in September. So this is the economic, we did the allocation process prior. This is the Economic Development Agreement. But just as a reminder, the state had provided about $5 million to the city to help fund some of the operations and other expenses at the FAM. The city had money budgeted in the general fund to be able to pay for some of these expenses, so that freed up some of that money. And so the decision was made to use some of that to kind of help with this Family Discovery Center, which, while I'm not an expert on that, I think you heard last time a little bit about it, that it's like a mock forest environment. It's kind of like pop-up book style, really interactive for families and young children. And so, the foundation was able to come up with $4.5 million. So we agreed to provide an allocation of $2 million. So this is just the Economic Development Agreement, putting all the contractual obligations in from that allocation previously. And I think it still has the normal things of, they have to put the money in, has some timelines in there that they expect to finish this by, I think, towards the end of the year next year. And I don't know if there's any other major points I'm missing there, but it's pretty much just papering up that deal.
Any comments, questions? No? All right, we can take a motion. Have a motion and a second. And the item passes. Item 4E on the agenda is a joint resolution with Project Nostalgia, approving an allocation not to exceed $309,439 in pay-for-performance film incentives.
Good afternoon, trust members. I'm bringing to you today an application for a project, as you said, Project Nostalgia. If you can proceed. It's an independent feature film that came our way recently. It's a production team out of New York, and we're very excited about this project. It's got some interesting cast members. There's an element of rock and roll to it, and one of the screenwriters is a known rock star whose name I can't mention, but it's a really good script. Filming dates are February 3rd to March 8th. Most of it will film here, some of it will film at the Palladium in Los Angeles. And it's basically a road movie of some young millennials going cross country to see their favorite band in Los Angeles. And this band was popular in the 90s, thus the screenwriter who is part of the project. They're filming in various neighborhoods. It's all practical locations, no sound stages. And 85% of the crew is going to be Oklahoma City based. Anticipated Oklahoma City expenditures totaling a little over $6 million, or 66% of the budget. Next. We're pre-qualifying them for 5%, and really the catch why they didn't make it to 10% is that portion that they're filming in Los Angeles would not get them over the 75% that we require to be filmed in Oklahoma City for the full 10%. Their expenditures are at least $500,000. More than 50% of the days are in Oklahoma City. Their main production office will be in Oklahoma City, and I'm trying to help them locate one in downtown right now. So if you know of any good space, please let me know. They're pre-qualified for the state rebate program, and the 5% rebate that we're recommending is $309,439. Next. 756 people will be hired locally. That translates to 3,500 man days of employment, 85% Oklahoma City residents, qualifying labor income of $4.127 million. 13 to 18 days of their schedule will be in Oklahoma City city limits. I don't think their post-production will be taking place here, so that's still a TBD. Next. 52% of filming days gets them over the threshold for qualifying, 85% of crew. The majority of vendors will be Oklahoma City vendors with an eye toward diversity, minority-owned companies. They're just starting to hire, so I don't have the exact numbers on that yet. After running their application through the Economic Impact Modeler, their total impact will be $14.3 million. The jobs supported, both direct and indirect, are 812. Labor income is $6.8 million. And again, qualified expenditures are almost $6.2 million. That translates to taxable expenditures of $779,100. Below the line salary, which is the crew, and per diem will equate to $3.440 million. Their above the line salary is capped at 25% of the total spend, and that's $687,000. $687,106. And with this pre-qualification, we'll be at about $1.4 million of our $3 million allocation for the rebate fund. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? I'm thinking maybe you could rent out the Gold Dome for them.
What's that?
Rent the Gold Dome. They can,
That's
for
a
office
good
space. There you
point.
go.
But they're already the Palladium's already written into the script, and it's based on an actual show that's happening.
Okay.
But this is a good
I
one.
was just trying to,
Yeah, trying to cover all bases. And I
Right.
will add, we pulled this one out in New Mexico.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we can take a motion on item 4E. We have a motion and a second. And the item passes. Item 4F has already been covered. Item 4G is the Oklahoma City Economic Development Foundation Retail Recruitment and Development Presentation. Ms. Fate.
Hello, good afternoon. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about what we've seen in the retail market for 2024. We'll cover the national retail trends, what's happening in Oklahoma City, major developments that are underway, and then our recruitment efforts, as well as the announcements that have happened in 2024. So just to kind of touch on some of the key trends, digital innovation is really key, immersive experiences. These are really driving a lot of these mixed-use master plan developments, and a lot of them require a lot of capital. So Kenny and I and Joanna have heard a lot of these tenants need capital to get into these spaces, and reaching out to the developers and seeing what that looks like from a dwell time, how it really activates shopping centers. Like I said, mixed use is really key. We're seeing food and beverage is continuing to be anchors. From an entertainment standpoint, we had Dick's House of Sports open, 100,000 square foot, 2-story facility at Penn and Memorial. So this is an entertainment activation facility. And then security and loss prevention is still a major concern. So you're seeing stores like CVS and Walgreens shutter. And then just the concerns with healthcare industry as a whole. Public-private partnerships remains to be a critical tool in terms of really driving these large-scale master plan developments, basically looking at ways to really uplift and create transformational projects. So looking at the major disruptors in 2024, some of the key facts for major disruptors that we've seen in 2024 is the rising cost in construction, labor market challenges, remote work impacts. There's so many people that are maybe live in the suburbs and they don't commute to the office as frequently, so that's really changing the retail patterns and how people shop, how they buy things. And then advancements in AI. So AI has been a very interesting topic that we've heard numerous times at many of the conventions. So speaking of AI, go to the next slide. And Texas is already experiencing drone deliveries. And last month I was in Phoenix, had the opportunity to moderate a session on AI, and we had experts from engineering, design, construction really talk about how they're implementing AI. And one of the national engineering firms says they were able to look at their employment and how everybody in their company was using this in an engineering company, and it was saving 12 minutes per day per each employee, which translated into about $10,000 annually in savings for this company. So next, just to kind of give you a little bit of overview from Oklahoma City, our retail vacancy rate is about 5.2%, which is pretty consistent with the national average, so it really aligns, reflects a really strong competitive market for us. There's been minimal tenants exiting the market, which really contributes to a tight market conditions. So there's not a lot of existing space online. So there's plenty of companies that want to come here, but we don't really have existing space for some of them that want that second generation. Rent growth is expected to remain positive for 2025. And then some of the major thriving retailers or your discounts like Costco, Home Goods, Dollar Tree, fitness centers are backfilling existing spaces. And then high-profile developments like Oak and Akana have really transformed the landscape. So just having the opportunity to highlight these, we've had 2 presentations nationally to talk about Akana in the last quarter of this year. And then just the attention around LA 2028 has really turned a lot of heads of developers who maybe are in Chicago or New York who haven't thought of Oklahoma City, but being able to talk about the success of that and spotlight Oklahoma City has been really instrumental. This just talks a little bit about our engagement. So we really lean in on opportunities to volunteer nationally. That's been kind of our secret sauce. So being intentional about being in ICSC, being involved in ULI nationally, so being involved in their product councils. I'm the chair for the Next Americas for ULI, and then really talking about Oklahoma City on these platforms and the success that we've had. So we've attended 13 trade shows this year. We already have 4 for Q1 of 2025 on the books. And then just talking about site visits and tours and, leaning into some of the existing organizations like Independent Shopkeepers, Commercial Real Estate Council, and those in our market. So this is probably the most exciting thing that we've added in this year. So it's a mobile analytics tool. So we partnered with the Alliance to be able to get the funding for this. And it's allowed us to really leverage data to help with tenant attraction. So you might think all these retailers and these major developers have access to this data as well, but being a second-tiered city, it allows us to be proactive and send them reports and talking about traffic, talking about personas and how many people are visiting, what's the traffic from year over year. And if it's a major mixed-use development, then looking at who the tenants are and how that's changing. So when you're looking at, is it attracting more kids, more families, what does those numbers look like? It's pulling from your mobile analytics. And this tool was designed and developed by data scientists, so it's a little different than some of the competitors. And I was just in New York last week at the ICSC show, and several of the major developers send me a report, I want to compare it to ours. And our numbers were substantially higher in talking about mobile analytics. So now I'll just kind of highlight the major developments that are underway. So Oak has been kind of the significant buzz this year. What they've done with the Heartwood Park in the middle, which now is an ice skating rink. Restoration Hardware is under construction. Our house is open. Capitol Grill opened, I want to say a month ago, 2 months ago. The Lively Hilton branded hotels opened. So we've had the opportunity to really work closely with the McLemmon Group, who is their product management that activates the spaces and oversees the entire development. They were actually promoted in a ICSC publication that went out nationally in May before the big show that we went to in Las Vegas. And then the Half, so we have Andretti's that's under construction at the Half. They've actually have the south area, so you have 100 acres now. That's I-235 in Wilshire, and they're putting apartments over there, hotel. We've worked with several restaurants that are out of market to look at the waterfront area there, so a lot of attraction there. With the new multi-purpose stadium coming online, making some introductions, talking about entertainment concepts that could be really good parallels to help elevate that development. Boardwalk at Bricktown still continues to be a high focus point. So talked to the developer recently, and they are planning to break ground in Q1 of 2025. He has several new to market tenants that have committed to that site. Chisholm Creek has partnered with Lincoln Property Group out of Dallas to work on the next phase of the development for them. They have a hotel that will be coming online. And then Okana is going to open in Q1 2025. Mustang Creek Crossing continues to look for opportunities to activate that 280 acres on the west side of I-40. So we've been in conversations with them. Wheeler District is planning second phase, which will include apartments. They just had the new Akaya sushi place open probably like 2 months ago. And if you try to get in, you need like 2 weeks to get a reservation. So great to see the activation in that area. With the OKC Thunder Arena, looking at activation around that. And there's a lot of developments and retailers that are interested in developing there, but want to see how that lays out. What's the connectivity, walkability, how all these different concepts are going to kind of play together. And then 150th and Portland is a new mixed-use development that will be coming online, as well as Alley North, which will be at 13th and Broadway. Here is kind of a quick run-through of our metrics that we look at for evaluating the retail program. So new recruitment contacts, being actively out in the market, engaged with developers and prospects, 159. Local outreach is 62. That's really came a lot with using our mobile analytics tool. So being really intentional and proactive at sending reports and helping move the needle with existing property owners and developers. This gives you a breakdown. Some of the shows that we go to are listed here on the right side. So Entertainment Experience Evolution, major big entertainment conference out in LA, Crew, ULI, and then all the ICSC programs. Here is a quick list of some of the retailers that have happened. With a city of our size, it's hard to track all of them, but here is just a kind of a quick run through of some of them. Some of these are at Penn Square. Some of them are under construction or they've been announced, but here's a quick little list of announcements that have either announced or opened in 2024. And with that, that's all I have. I haven't opened any questions.
What did you say you chair?
What was what?
Didn't you say you chair a committee?
I can't understand what you said, sorry.
Oh, I thought you said you chaired a committee.
We've chaired a couple. So ICSC Red River, I'm on the planning committee for that. And then we do a retail runway. So that will be in Dallas this year. And then also the ULI Next Americas. So it's a national event. I'm the marketing chair for nationally for that. So it gives us exposure to people that we wouldn't have access to. And then we're on a product council nationally for ULI for P3.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Comments? Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we have to receive that. Okay, we don't need to. All right, item 4H on the agenda is to receive the amended Northeast Renaissance Redevelopment Project Plan. Mr. Sudol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a, oh, okay, I was going to say, so we, I think I mentioned last meeting during part of my report that we had recently, we're working on this change with the Northeast Renaissance TIF. So just wanted to bring this, council approved this previously back on December 3rd. So there are really a couple different changes here. We added 2 new small increment districts, one at 63rd and MLK and one at Northeast 41st and Post Road. We added also, one of those obviously is in the Adventure District, so we added an objective in the project plan to encourage development in the Adventure District. And then there was also a provision that's kind of a standard provision that we usually put in our TIF districts. For whatever reason, it wasn't in this one, that allows this body to approve minor amendments. So that means things that are less than 5% of the TIF district. So just as a reminder, this is a current map of prior to the amendments of the Northeast Renaissance TIF, and you can see it's kind of an oddly shaped TIF that has a lot of stuff mostly around 23rd Street corridor, but also some of the MLK corridor and some other areas. And then these were really the 2 districts that we added. Increment District D, this is the one in the Adventure District, and this was to really help. There's a project there that's doing volleyball, pickleball, trying to bring some hotel and restaurant and other things there. And this one I did want to mention was unique, that we really had a lot of discussion with the Millwood School District and a lot of community members, and there was just a lot of concern about trying to make sure, because Millwood had such a small geographic footprint and not a lot of opportunity for increased property taxes. We really came to a nice, I think, compromise of, we figured out how long we needed to get this one particular development, its incentive that needed to get over the hump. And we really decided to work with them and make this just a 7-year TIF so that we could, as fast as possible, get any new incremental revenues, flowing back to the schools and the other taxing jurisdictions. The other one on 41st and Post, that's the area where the Filmmakers Ranch is, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we actually have a movie studio and sound studio out there, and they're very successful. It's the old Green Acres School that they had repurposed for that, and they're looking at expanding and building some sound stages, so we wanted to put that in place as we have discussions with them about potentially incentivizing and helping with some additional expansion of their film capabilities out there. So those discussions are ongoing, but the increment district is now created. The project areas on the one on the right was the same as the increment area on the Filmmakers Ranch area. We did make a little bit bigger project area to make sure we encompass kind of all the public areas and areas around Millwood, so that if there were any funds left over, we would at least have the option to potentially do some other public improvements in that area. So those two increment districts, D has a budget of $2 million. Again, this is a reminder, when we set the budgets, we're trying to do our best estimate of what gets generated over the life of that TIF district. And then TIF District E has a budget of $9 million, and you'll see that in both those cases, the majority of that goes towards, potential incentives for the retail or commercial development, but we also try to put categories in to cover public improvements or potentially doing projects with other taxing jurisdictions. As always, those budgets can be amended in the future if we need to. So that's really in the summary, was just, we added the bullet points there are in the current project plan. Those were what the objectives were of the Northeast Renaissance TIF. So we added the one that's underlined there that was talking about trying to bring retail and entertainment development in the Adventure District. And then again, we mentioned the minor amendment. So what that means is if we add more than 5% to the district's area, or more than 5% to the budget, we would have to go back through the normal full process, which involves going through council and I think planning commission and everybody. But it gives this body the ability to do that if there are minor amendments, corrections, really small properties, things like that. And so that's just kind of a standard thing we have in most of all of our other TIF districts, but for some reason did not have it in this one. So I think that's it. That's pretty much what we did. And the timeline was just letting you know this was a longer process, and we had started having these discussions a while back, but just kind of giving you that we did have community meetings. Actually attended a really well-attended community meeting where I presented at Millwood High School. We had TIF review meetings, and this was a little bit unusual. We had a TIF review meeting in October, and that really had a lot of public attendance, and there was, concerns raised, so we tabled everything, went and met, came back with some of those changes, and had another TIF meeting with the review committee in November, and then came forward at council in December. So we did also, I do want to mention, because that project is moving on a fast timeline in that increment D, part of when we created it, we also did go ahead and activate that TIF district. So D is actually being activated because we wanted to go ahead and set the baseline because we're trying to get that development's going, and they're trying to actively attract other partners in there, restaurants, hotel, et cetera. So we're already moving ahead on that one.
So that will be through what?
So that would then next year, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna, so next year would be the first year of the TIF, and then it would be set that year plus 6 more years. So it would be, do my math.
31.
I think 31 would be the last year. So it'd expire in 32.
The end of 31.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I believe that's correct. Plus or minus a year.
Any other comments, questions, thoughts? No? All right. We can go ahead and take a motion in a second, which we have. Please vote. And the item passes. Item 5 on the agenda is the General Manager's Report. Ms. Boggs?
Good afternoon. As promised, last month we told you we would have some additional improvements to our financial reports. I just wanted to point out that for any of our funds that have a debt component to them, we've added some additional detail. So you can look at TIFs 2, TIF 8, TIF 10, or TIF 13, and you can see some of that information. But I will be brief since we've kept you fairly long today. Do you have any questions?
Nope, no
right,
questions.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you need to vote to receive that or no? No, good. Item 6 on the agenda. Comments from staff? Any comments from trustees? Have any citizens signed up to be heard? No. All right, that brings us to item 7. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.